Erev Tov Rabotai, we are continuing with our Mishna Yomi Masechet Eruvin. We are up to Perik Bet Mishnah Hey. Today's Mishnah should be Le'elu Nishmat Neria Ben Svelana Ranbai Ben Eliyahu Ben Burcha Israelov Menuchatam Began Eden Amen. In Mishnah 3, the sages drew a distinction between a non-residential area, such as a garden or a karpef, and a residential area, such as a courtyard. Carrying in a non-residential area, even one enclosed by complete partitions, is forbidden if it measures more than 2 bet se'ah, but carrying in a residential area is permitted no matter how large it is. Now this Mishnah cites Tanaim, who rule more stringently. Vodamar Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava. Additionally, Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava said, and the Rav explains that in addition to the stringency that he taught at the end of the previous Mishnah, that double posts are effective only for a public well, Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava teaches another stringency here. Hagina v'karpef shen 70 ama v'shirayim al 70 ama v'shirayim. In the case of a garden or a karpef that is 70 amot and a fraction by 70 amot and a fraction, meaning 70 and 2/3 by 70 and 2/3 amot, which is about 2 bet se'ah, mukefet gadel gavoa 10 tvachim, and is surrounded by a fence 10 tvachim high, metaltilin betocha, we may carry in it, ubilvad sheba shomira o bedira o shetie smucha la'ir. We may carry in it only if there is a watchman's booth, which is a hut in which a person lives day and night while tending to animals or guarding fields, or betira, or dwelling inside it, which refers to a dwelling in which the owner of the garden or karpef would stay once in a while, or shetis muchalair, or it is near the town, meaning an enclosure within 2,000 amot of the city limits. Now, since the owner can go there whenever he likes, even on Shabbat, when traveling more than 2,000 amot from one's residence is forbidden, it is considered residential because, again, it's within 2,000 amot of the city limits. Now, in these cases, it's used for residential purposes. So, according to this Tana Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava, the size limit of 2 bet se'ah applies to a residential area, meaning carrying even in a fully enclosed residential area is prohibited if it measures more than 2 bet se'ah. Right? Because Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava here says when it's almost 2 bet se'ah, when it's 70 amot and a fraction by 70 amot and a fraction, which the Kamar has explained is about 4,994 square amot, so it's about 2 bet se'ah, and it's surrounded by a fence 10 tefachim high, you can carry in it if it's a residential area. So, as for if in this case where it's a residential area, you still cannot carry if it's more than the 2 bet se'ah limit. As for an enclosed non-residential area, carrying in it is always forbidden, no matter how small it is. And the commentaries explain, Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava disagrees with the sages of Mishnah 3 on 2 points. A, residential area. While the sages permit carrying in any enclosed residential area, regardless of size, Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava requires it to be smaller than 2 bet se'ah, which is specifically 70 and 2/3 by 70 and 2/3 amot. And B, non-residential area, while the sages permit carrying in an enclosed non-residential area if it does not exceed 2 bet se'ah, Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava forbids carrying there no matter how small it is. Now, according to Tosfot, the notes bring down, Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava insists that the enclosed area not be larger than 70 and 2/3 by 70 and 2/3 amot, only in the situation that he describes, which is namely a garden and a karpef, which are essentially non-residential but serve some minor residential purposes. So, for example, they contain a shelter for watchmen. However, if the area is truly residential, Tosfot say carrying in it is permitted no matter how large it is. An example would be a courtyard in front of in front of houses, which is used by many people on a daily basis. There's a machloket how to understand Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava, if he's specifically limiting it to these 3 situations, or it would be all residential purposes. Now, the next Tana basically agrees with the previous opinion, but as a broader definition of what's considered residential, Rabbi Yehuda says, "Afilu en ba elabo v'shiach umara metaltilin b'tocha." Even if the garden or karpef has in it only a pit, a ditch, or a vault in which rainwater is held for drinking, it's considered residential and we may carry in it. Now, these are holes in the ground in which rainwater is gathered. A bowl, a pit, is round. A shiach, a ditch, is long and narrow. And a me'ara, a vault, is square and covered. and has an opening in its cover. Now, according to Rabbi Yehuda, an area is residential even if there is no dwelling in it, such as a watchman's booth, and even if it's not near the town, but merely contains a water hole from which people drink. Now, a third Tana rejects the premise of the previous two Tanaim and rules more in the line of the sages of Mishnah 3. Rabbi Akiva says, even if the garden or carpet does not contain any of these things, and it's not residential at all, we may carry in it, provided that it's not more than 70 amot and a fraction by 70 amot and a fraction, meaning 70 and 2/3 by 70 and 2/3 amot. Now, according to Rabbi Akiva, it is a non-residential area, such as a garden or carpet, that's subject to the size limit. Carrying in a residential area is permitted no matter how large it is, according to Rabbi Akiva, as the sages stated in Mishnah 3. However, the commentaries point out Rabbi Akiva differs with the sages in one detail. Rabbi Akiva holds that a non-residential enclosed area may not be larger than 70 and 2/3 by 70 and 2/3 amot, which is slightly less than 4,994 square amot, while the sages rule that the limit is to betseah, 5,000 square amot. Now, the Mishnah cites a dispute in which both sides agree that carrying in a non-residential area is permitted if it's 2 betseah or smaller. They differ as to what shape it must have in the event that it measures exactly 2 betseah. Rabbi Eliezer says, if its length is more than its width by even 1 amah, en metaltelin betocha, we may not carry in it, meaning carrying in a non-residential area of this size is prohibited unless it's a square. However, it's necessary only that the length be within 1 amah of the width. A smaller difference does not matter, as the notes point out. Rabbi Yossi says, Afilu orka pishnayim be'ochba mitatinin betocha, even if it's a rectangle with its length twice as long as its width, we may carry in it, meaning even if it is as long as 100 amot and as narrow as 50 amot, carrying there is permitted, but its length may not be more than twice its width, meaning it can be over 100 amot, as the Gemara explains on page 23b Masechet Shabbat. Again, whoever could see it inside in the notes, and whoever can look in the illustrated Mishnayot, it'll help clarify the Mishnah. The Rav does say, "V'alachak Rabbi Yossi depalig ad Rabbi Eliezer v'lo bay merubaot." The Halacha follows the opinion of Rabbi Yossi and does not follow the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer. Now again, these two opinions both agree that carrying in a non-residential area is permitted if it is 2 betseah or smaller, but like we quoted in the previous opinion, that itself is subject to a machloket. And that is in Rabotai of Mishnah. Hey, Mishnah Vav now cites another opinion regarding the size of an enclosed garden or carpet in which carrying is permitted on Shabbat. Amar Rabbi Elai. Rabbi Elai said, Shemati me Rabbi Eliezer. I heard from Rabbi Eliezer that the commentators add that it is permitted to carry in an enclosed garden or carpet, va'afilu hi kebet kor, even if it is as large as a bet kor, which is 30 betseah. Now, a bet kor, which is 75,000 square amot, is 15 times larger than 2 betseah. So this is the fourth opinion regarding the size of an enclosed non-residential area in which carrying is permitted. Now, these are the notes bring down the 4 opinions in increasing order of stringency. A. Rabbi Elai reports here in the name of Rabbi Eliezer that carrying is permitted in an enclosed non-residential area as long as it is not longer than 1 bet kol or 75,000 square amot. B. The sages in Mishnah 3 state that it may not be more than 2 betseah or 5,000 square amot. C. Rabbi Akiva in Mishnah 5 holds that the maximum is 70 and 2/3 by 70 and 2/3 amot, or 4,994 square amot. And D. Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava and Rabbi Yehuda in Mishnah 5 rule that carrying is prohibited in a non-residential area of any size. But again, like we said, that itself is subject to an understanding according to Tosfot in Rabbi Yehuda's opinion. Now, the commentators explain that having mentioned one ruling reported by Rabbi Elai in the name of Rabbi Eliezer, the Mishnah now will cite 2 more. The first concerns Eruvin Chatzerot, and we know if several houses open into a common courtyard, it is forbidden on Shabbat to carry from the courtyard into any of the houses or from any of the houses into the courtyard unless the owners of all the houses join in a Eruvei Chatzerot. Now, all of the homeowners must participate in the Eruv. If one of them fails to do so, it is not effective. However, this problem can be solved to some extent if that person says, even on Shabbat, that he gives up his right to use the courtyard. It then becomes permitted for anyone to carry in and out of the other houses. Rabbi Eli states in the name of Rabbi Eliezer how the house of that person should be treated. Now, the commentaries do give a background. It is rabbinically forbidden to carry between one person's house and a courtyard shared by several people, even if the courtyard is enclosed with valid partitions and is a full-fledged Reshut Yechid, private domain. Now, the reason is as follows. A house is the private domain of one individual, while a courtyard is the joint domain of all the courtyard's residents, which makes it look like a Reshut HaRabim, a public domain, in relation to the houses. Since carrying between a home and a courtyard could be confused with carrying between a private domain and a public domain, the sages prohibited it. Now, through the process of making an Eruvei Chatzerot, however, all the homeowners become halachic owners of the entire courtyard, including the houses. So carrying between the houses and the courtyard is therefore permitted because everything now belongs to the same group of people. However, if one homeowner does not join the Eruv, it does not permit carrying at all. Although the houses of all the others have become their joint property by means of the Eruv, the courtyard belongs to a non-participant as well. And since the courtyard is more public than the houses, one more person has access to it, carrying between any of the houses in the courtyard remains forbidden. Now, a partial solution is for the non-participant to say that he surrenders his right to use the courtyard, which makes it the property of everyone except him. Now, all the residents may then carry between the courtyard and any of the houses except his, since both the courtyard and those houses belong to them alone. However, it remains prohibited for anyone to carry in and out of his house, because that house still belongs only to him, while the courtyard belongs to everyone else. Now, this ruling, which is stated in chapter 6, Mishnah 3, is the accepted halakha, as the Rav says. Now, Rabbi Eli holds that Rabbi Eliezer took a more lenient view in regard to the non-participant's house, as this Mishnah will explain. V'chen shamati mimenu, and I also heard from him, Anshe chatzel sheshachach echad me'en v'lo erev, that if the members of a courtyard formed an Eruv and one of them forgot to join in the Eruv, but then he abandoned his rights to the courtyard, beto asur milachnis u'milaotzi lo, aval lehem mutar. It is still forbidden for him to carry in and out of his house, but it is permitted for them to carry in and out of his house. Now, Rabbi Eli teaches here in the name of Rabbi Eliezer that when the non-participant gave up his right to use the courtyard, he also gave up his right to his own house. Now, although he did not say so explicitly, this is understood to be his intent, because since his purpose in giving up his rights to the courtyard is to allow the others to carry, he presumably wants to enable them to carry in as large an area as possible. So in this way, all his rights are ceded to the other homeowners, and he is merely their guest. So they are then allowed to carry even in and out of his house, because the entire courtyard with all its houses, including his, is now owned by the same group of people, which is all the homeowners except him. Now, even he may carry in and out of their houses as the guest of the joint owners, but there's one problem. If he carries between the courtyard and his own house, he automatically reasserts his ownership of the courtyard, because he presumably intends to use his own property as the rightful owner, not merely as a guest. So his previous surrender of his rights to the courtyard is now retracted, and the Eruv becomes ineffective once again. So to prevent this from happening, he is forbidden to carry in and out of his house. Now, like we mentioned, this is not the halachically accepted view. Rather, the halakha states that even after the non-participant surrenders his right to use the courtyard, the other residents too are forbidden to carry in and out of his house, as the Mishnah will say in chapter 6, Mishnah 3, because it cannot be assumed that he gave up ownership of his own house, as the Gemara explains on page 69b in Masechet Eruvin. Now, the Mishnah quotes the third ruling reported by Rabbi Eli in the name of Rabbi Eliezer. V'chen shamati mimenu, I also heard from him, sheyotzin be'akrevanin b'Pesach, that we can fulfill the obligation to eat maror on Pesach with akrevanin, which is a bitter vegetable whose leaves are shaped like scorpions, which are akravim. Now, according to the halakha, the Rav says akrevanin are not maror, and one who eats this plant on the night of Pesach does not fulfill his obligation to eat maror. V'chizarti al kol talmidav ubikashti lichaver. Rabbi Eli concludes that I went around to all of Rabbi Eliezer's students and searched for a colleague who had also heard these three rulings, v'lo matzati, and I did not find anyone who had heard them. And the Rav does say, Ven halacha ke'achad me'en, the halacha does not follow any of these three rulings that Rabbi Eli says in the name of Rabbi Eliezer. And the Rav gives us the conclusion, in the case of the garden and the karpef, more than 2 betzah, a person will not be allowed to carry there. And by the case of the Eruv Chatzerot, when one of the homeowners forgot to join the Eruv, and he nullifies his ownership of the courtyard but not his home, nobody can carry into from his home to the courtyard or vice versa. But their houses to the courtyard is allowed. And again, הקרבנין is not maror. And a person does not fulfill his obligation through them on Passover. And that is in Rabotai of today's Mishna Yomi. Baruch Adonai Leolam. Amen v'amen.